Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's jump right into this, because right now we are witnessing a massive multi-trillion-dollar shift happening across finance. We are watching real-world assets. I mean, everything from the actual real estate you live in, to private equity, to US treasuries, moving on-chain. But here's the thing, taking highly regulated traditional assets and throwing them onto a public blockchain, that is not as simple as launching the next trending meme coin. Not at all. It requires an entirely new architecture of trust and control. So let's break down exactly how this actually works.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the ontological foundation, then explore standard number 1, which is ERC-3643, followed by standard number 2, ERC-1400. After that, we'll do a quick comparative analysis, and then we'll wrap up by looking at the very real risks and limitations involved.
All right, Section 1, the ontological foundation. Let's look at why the current, incredibly popular standard, ERC-20, just completely fails when it comes to real-world assets.
So the classic ERC-20 standard was built from the ground up for permissionless fungibility. It is totally completely blind to who the user actually is. And this perfectly illustrates the ultimate culture clash of two very different worlds. Over in decentralized finance, the golden rule is code is law. If the code allows it, you can do it. But in traditional finance, well, law is law. A blockchain is really just a settlement layer, and it absolutely must remain strictly subordinate to off-chain legal frameworks, court orders, and strict regulatory mandates.
Now, when these two worlds collide, we get something that is frankly terrifying for traditional institutions: permissionless liability. If you are an issuer, you hold strict legal liability for who owns your asset. You cannot just let a tokenized US Treasury slip into some anonymous sanctioned wallet and then shrug and say, well, the code allowed it? No way. In traditional finance, that is a fast track to prison. Plus, if a private key is lost off-chain, the legal ownership actually still persists, which means the blockchain literally has to be mutable by a higher authority, and standard ERC-20 tokens simply cannot do any of this natively.
So, how do we fix this? That brings us to Section 2. Standard number 1, ERC-3643. This is known as the T-Rex protocol, or as we like to call it, the Identity-Centric King.
To solve the ERC-20 problem, we need specialized standards, and ERC-3643 is a massive one. It has already tokenized over $32 billion in value, and it does this by building the perfect token lifecycle. Instead of just using a simple whitelist that someone could easily bypass, it uses a highly secure, modular OnchainID architecture. Here's the flow. First, a user has to complete KYC. Second, a trusted claim is added directly to their self-sovereign ID. Third, before anything moves, the token checks an on-chain identity registry. And then, if, and literally only if, both the sender and the receiver are fully verified, the transfer executes.
Now, obviously, this system works flawlessly when everyone plays by the rules and has their verified identities ready to go. But we really have to ask ourselves, what happens when things go wrong? What happens when a transfer doesn't meet those strict regulatory criteria, or someone tries to send a regulated security to a dark wallet?
This is where it gets really cool. The protocol uses a very specific smart contract hook called _before-token transfer. I want you to think of this hook exactly like a massive, unforgiving nightclub bouncer standing right in front of your digital asset. The exact moment a sender attempts a transfer, the bouncer intercepts it in real time. It checks the guest list, meaning it queries the identity registry. If it doesn't find a valid KYC claim for both parties, boom, the bouncer rejects you. The transfer hits what developers call a hard revert. The transaction completely fails, and the tokens never even move. This brilliantly neutralizes vulnerabilities because compliance is structurally enforced at the exact millisecond of transfer.
Moving right along to Section 3. Let's look at standard number 2, ERC-1400. This is the security token standard, also known as the multi-tranche master.
While our previous standard focused heavily on exactly who holds the asset, ERC-1400 takes a totally different approach. It focuses on the structure of the asset itself. It is essentially this modular Swiss Army knife for institutional developers, and its absolute killer feature, something called partitions. Partitions literally divide a single user's token balance into separate categories or tranches right inside the exact same wallet.
To really visualize this, think of it exactly like a physical filing cabinet holding your assets. Inside this single wallet, you have one drawer, let's call it Partition A, that is just wide open. The shares inside this drawer are totally unlocked and freely tradable. But right below it in the exact same cabinet is Partition B. Now this drawer is firmly locked tight. It holds your vested shares or tokens that are stuck under a strict Regulation D restriction.
ERC-140 manages these different drawers independently, which means it handles incredibly complex cap tables beautifully.
Okay, let's head into Section 4, Comparative Analysis. It's time for a direct showdown. ERC-3643 versus ERC-1400.
So, if you're a developer or an institution, how on earth do you choose between these two heavyweights? Well, it really comes down to your primary constraint. ERC-3643 is identity-focused and highly gas-efficient, which makes it absolutely ideal for things like private credit and real estate. Plus, it allows for self-sovereign key recovery. On the flip side, ERC-1400 is amazing for complex equity investing schedules because of those partitions we just talked about. However, having to iterate through all those different tranches makes it computationally heavy. You actually risk hitting block-ass limits, and it requires totally manual intervention from the issuer for recovery.
Almost done here. Section 5, Risks and Limitations. Let's talk about the friction points, because we all know no technology is perfect.
Bringing highly regulated assets onto an immutable ledger introduces some massive friction points. The first big one is centralization risk. Both of these standards require forced transfer functions so that issuers can comply with court orders. Now, if you're a crypto purist, that is a massive red flag. Then you've got ecosystem fragmentation. Interoperability between different identity registries is currently pretty messy. And finally, privacy. Linking your actual real-world legal identity to a totally public blockchain ledger, that is a huge data exposure risk.
But there is a silver lining. To solve this critical privacy issue, the industry is turning to an absolutely brilliant cryptographic solution, zero-knowledge KYC. This entirely shifts the model from simply trusting an intermediary with your raw sensitive data to mathematically verifying a proof. With ZK-KYC, you can cryptographically prove to a smart contract that, hey, you're an accredited investor or you're over 18 without ever revealing your actual name, your home address, or your date of birth to the public. It is a total game changer.
Which brings us to our core takeaway for this explainer. Bridging traditional finance and decentralized technology requires so much more than just clever programming. We are literally translating centuries of established financial law into smart contracts. And it leaves us with this profound reality. Standards aren't just code, they are the legal language of the future. The real question is, as these smart contracts become the new judges and juries of our global financial system, are we truly ready to let algorithms enforce the law? Thanks so much for joining me.